Hi, everyone.
Greetings all. In the chapter, They Are No Part of the World, in the Proclaimer's book, we are now on page 197 in the subhead, When National Emblems Became Objects of Devotion, and they've concentrated so far on the era of Mussolini and Hitler, as they usually do.
Mm-hmm.
But of course they weren't neutral, and at the very same time they're saying you cannot under any circumstances Heil Hitler or stand up for a national anthem. At the very same time, Rutherford is doubling down on loyalty to the organization. So no accident that the very next booklet they mention in the next paragraph on page 197 is called Loyalty.
Mm-hmm.
So let's read the 4 paragraphs to the next subhead.
Further explanation of the reasons for the position taken by Jehovah's Witnesses was provided in the booklet Loyalty, published also in 1935. Attention was directed to such scriptures as the following: Exodus 20, 3-7, which commanded that worship go only to Jehovah, and that God's servants were not to make or bow before any image or likeness of anything in heaven or on earth. Luke 20, verse 25, where Jesus Christ directed that not only should Caesar's things be paid back to Caesar, but what belongs to God must be rendered to him. And Acts 5:29, where the apostles firmly stated, we must obey God as ruler rather than men. In the United States, the propriety of compelling anyone to salute a flag was submitted to the courts. On June 14, 1943, the U.S. Supreme Court reversed its own former decision, and in the case of West Virginia State Board of Education versus Barnett, ruled that compulsory flag saluting was inconsistent with the guarantee of freedom set out in the nation's own constitution.
The issue involving nationalistic ceremonies has by no means been limited to Germany and the United States. In North and South America, Europe, Africa, and Asia, Jehovah's Witnesses have been cruelly persecuted because of their non-participation, even though they stand respectfully during flag salute or similar ceremonies. Children have been beaten. Many have been expelled from school. Numerous court cases have been fought. Observers have felt impelled to acknowledge, however, that in this, as in other matters, Jehovah's Witnesses have proved to be like the early Christians. Yet, as stated in the book, The American Character, quote, to the overwhelming majority, the objections of the witnesses were as unintelligible as the objections of the Christians in the Roman Empire to making a formal sacrifice to the divine, emperor, split in two here, to the divine emperor, were to Trajan and Pliny. So in other words, the Romans and the world of that time would not have understood why you don't want to do it if you're a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
This was to be expected, since Jehovah's Witnesses, like the early Christians, viewed matters not as the world does, but according to Bible principles. So in the first paragraph you have the booklet Loyalty, although you don't tell us what's in it. That will be another video sometime, no doubt. But you do tell us the substance of the scriptural argument, namely that Exodus is mentioned about idols, don't make and don't bow before any image. And then finally you say, well, Acts 5:29 is usually closing statement, the apostles stating we must obey God as ruler rather than men. But of course, when you sign up to be a Jehovah's Witness, at least in those days, you're baptized in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, not in the name of an organization.
Yeah.
So what was implicit then in what Rutherford was doing and insisting upon, that is loyalty to him, not to Hitler or any other government, what was implicit then is now explicit.
Yeah. So I would say the way that Rutherford made that implication, and they've left that verse out of here completely in their consideration, is Romans 13:1, where they did not believe that the superior authorities of Romans 13:1 was the governing people.
They had no divine
the
authority,
secular,
according to you, right?
Yeah. So you only obey Rutherford, really. But I mean, they're giving you the impression that it's just you're following the Bible and nobody else is, because they didn't believe that the secular powers really were what was being talked about in Romans 13. And yet, if you read Romans 13, there's no way you can miss it if you read the context.
And we'll put a link in at the end to a video we've already done, Vivian did, on making that stand as Rutherford did for all those years, and then long after Rutherford, another 20 or so years after Rutherford.
Mm-hmm.
You were in defiance of not only Charles Taze Russell, your founder, who didn't have that position. He has the present position of the Watchtower.
Yeah.
But you're also in defiance of the churches. You're in defiance of Christian tradition. You don't care about that, of course, but at least it should bother you that you've done a double reverse on this.
Yeah.
But that's not acknowledged here, although
Yeah.
I got a feeling they're going to sneak that one in somewhere else in this book. But here it would make a big difference in the way you evaluate their stance.
Yeah, you would have that stance if you believed that basically our organization is the only godly one.
Yeah.
So we must obey them.
Well, how about the persecution, though?
Well, even that, I would say, I mean, this is in the States, this court case, but, I mean, I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness and went to school. I can't say that I had any kind of real bad persecution. I was certainly not beaten. I was ridiculed occasionally, but not even that. I wouldn't say, I don't recall too many instances, one or two, where I was really ridiculed. But otherwise, you know, people, I think I felt more self-conscious about the things I had to do. So I was maybe a little embarrassed, not because I didn't think I was doing the right thing, but because you stand out, and no kid growing up, you know, with all the insecurities that young people have, wants to stand out as different.
That's true. And I was teased, and I'm pretty sure you were teased by family members who weren't witnesses and friends who weren't witnesses. But that's not persecution, folks.
Yeah.
When you put your data down here and talk about specific instances where children are beaten, or people are thrown into jail, or even killed, martyred occasionally in Jehovah's Witness circles, put that against what's happening in the real world, where in the 20th century, more Christians were martyred around the world than in any other century of Christian history, including the first three.
So I think the last line in here implies that it's only Jehovah's Witnesses that live by biblical principles and get persecuted. And that's just not true.
And why is it that, yes, we get teased, maybe we even get ridiculed, maybe occasionally you get even physical violence, but why is it so rare in the West? Because the West believes in free speech, and the courts will uphold it, as you admit here. But what you're not admitting is that really the cost for repudiating absolute loyalty, the demand for absolute loyalty to the organization, the cost of it is far more than just being beaten up once or twice or being thrown in jail for a few weeks or months.
So here we're talking about people who will salute a flag of the country that they live under. But Jehovah's Witnesses, you have to ask yourself, are you compelled to do more than salute the organization? I think you're compelled to do a lot more.
A life commitment.
Yeah, it's a life commitment. And if you disagree with something, according to recent statements, even if it doesn't make sense, you're supposed to obey them. So really, you're doing more than saluting. Your ultimate authority then becomes the governing body or JW.org. You're told you must submit to them, even if you don't understand
threat of
disfellowshipping.
Which is a lot worse. Shunning for life, losing your family for life, is a lot worse than being beaten up or ridiculed at school.
It's a life sentence then.
It's a life sentence,
And I think this idea that, it just went right out of my head just as I thought it.
Well, I wanted to throw in the reference that is very familiar to you, except you apply it you flip it over when you apply it, which is the faithful, discreet slave. Remember the other guy that's you think it's another guy, but it's actually not another guy. It's the potential for the faithful servant to become an unfaithful or a wicked servant.
Yeah.
And what does he do when he's a wicked servant? To prove he's a wicked servant, he beats his fellow slaves.
Yeah.
Now ask yourself, which religion on earth is well known for beating its fellow slaves?
Yeah.
We're not talking about war here. We're talking about what you do to people.
Shunning and forbidding communication between family members because someone disagreed.
Yeah.
You know, the first idea that we read about last week was about conscience. But in the Watchtower, you have everyone having the same conscience. That doesn't happen. Then you're not going by your conscience. You're going by a policy of whoever.
And I have no doubt that if the law allowed it, Jehovah's Witnesses would legitimize and excuse or justify capital punishment. Because, of course, in Islam, the other religion that's well known for coercing members to stay within, in certain lands anyway, it is legal to execute those who are apostate.
Well, if the policy was set up by jw.org, they'd go with it.
So
because
watch out.
Your ultimate authority is them. It's not Bible principles. It's whatever they tell you those Bible principles mean.
In the current
Understanding.
context. Yeah, in the
Yeah.
current understanding, yeah.
Right.
What's our link?
We're linking to a video called Rutherford Defies Churches, Russell, and JW.org on, oh, well, that doesn't make sense, on Romans 13.
The superior authorities. Yeah. So the position was between the end of the 1920s and 1962 that the Romans 13 does not apply
Oh, yeah. So
to
they do.
the superior authorities of this world.
Yeah. So they do defy what they now teach.
Yeah. So they're defying, Rutherford is not only defying Russell and the churches,
And what they currently say themselves.
he's also defying JW.org.
Yeah. Okay.
And
so
he did.
That makes sense.
Give
yeah.
him credit for gumption anyway.
But the problem is that Jehovah's Witnesses just follow whoever's in the lead and whoever tells you what it means.
Yep. It's always follow the leader unconditionally. See you next time.